there that if they move into, and let's give you an example of that. I'll come back to that in a moment, the high care. But yes, the same thing was said. So as you can see, yeah, we wouldn't, you're right, we can't say this is the strategy that you do, but we could give the comparison and say this is why you really should consider it. Because if you've got an option to do number 3, you would never really choose number 2. Because from the decision about keep the house, sell the house, there is no difference there. In the third option, you have increased your interest cost slightly, because at the moment the periodical payment's slightly higher interest than the reverse mortgage. But hey, it's a pretty small extra cost. The other thing is it doesn't even have to be 10,000. It could be 1,000. There's no amount that it has to actually be. It can be as small as you like. So as I said, that option there, and using the combination of the reverse mortgage to keep the home and the periodical payment to keep those exemptions actually becomes a very, very powerful combination if the decision is to keep the home. So I think it then comes back to you sort of wipe out the middle one and really sort of show that the comparison. But your decision then comes down to all the fundamentals about should they keep the home, should they sell the home, and if they're going to do that, and then just the financing and the arrangements about if they decide to keep the home, how you actually structure that. If they decide to sell the home, then the financial implications about what do they do with that large lump sum of money, given that the person, it's still that person's money, but you've got the children who are starting to make decisions about it, and there's a whole lot of privacy issues, elder abuse issues, and other things as well that need to be considered in that. So there's 2 decisions there, you know, do they sell it, do they keep it, how do you structure the arrangements, and how do you invest any surplus cash. If the person was moving into high care, and I don't have the example there for you, but if they're moving into high care, the decision is a little different because they're moving to high care, they're only going to pay about the $10,000 a year as the accommodation charge, the 9.5, whatever it specifically is. So they don't have the same pressure about needing to have $100,000 in bank. So she doesn't need to sell any assets to fund it. She doesn't need to take a loan to fund getting into the facility. But she's still got the same decisions to make. Does she sell it? Does she keep it? If she sells the house and she's in occupied care, she will lose her age pension completely. And that will really upset a lot of clients. She may still, depending on how much taxable income she gets. The reason why she doesn't lose it here is because the bond is an exempt asset. But if she sells it, moves into high care, the whole lot of what proceeds she gets don't be accessible, so she'll lose her age pension. The difference there, and the figures that I've done, the difference is she sells her house with surplus profits about $10,000 a year after allowing for fees and investment. If she retains the house and rents it, it's about $19,000 a year, plus the growth on the house. So even though she doesn't need to sell the house to move in, just the difference in that she can be making a difference in $10,000 a year profit, plus the growth on the house, that's still very important. Quickly for you as well, just is more better. And sometimes what we're looking at, we've got people away from, in a lot of cases, trying to work out how to pay lower bonds to should they actually even pay an extra bond. And this is where it's an interesting strategy, again, about, well, dealer, we only want her to pay a $400,000 bond. That she might be clued on, or you guys might have an idea of how this works as well. And then negotiate and say, well, what if she pays an extra $100,000? Is there a benefit in that? The reason why they might look at this in the first place is because they turn the house as an exempt asset into an assessable asset, pensions take a hit, and they're going, what can we do to actually fix that and get a better outcome? If she did pay the extra $100,000 bond, her age pension will go up by nearly $4,000 a year, just because we've got rid of some of the assessable assets and some of the assessable income, so she'll get an increase there. But that might be enough for her to go, oh, that looks good, but she does need to get advice, she does need to look at everything. So in this case here, the daily fees have also gone up by about $377. That's because she's got higher levels of income with the extra pension coming in, the way it's assessed. So she will pay a little bit more, but that's nothing. She's still better off. But her income earnings have gone down. She doesn't have that $100,000 sitting in the bank. It was earning 5%, so she's gone down $5,000. So in the total of it, financially, she's not any better off then. She's down $1,477. But could negotiate, because again, you might decide that from your perspective it works to have that extra $100,000 available and sitting in your bank account and being able to use it, or to be able to pay for pets, whatever you need for. So there's the potential to negotiate there to reduce either extra service fees, reduce the retention amount on the bond, or something to compensate her for the $1,477 that she is down, and still give you an advantage of having the extra $100,000. So you might be able to get a better benefit from the $100,000 than what you need to trade off with her as well. So you could trade off, if you said, we'll reduce your fees somewhere on the line by, say, $3,000. She's getting something like a $1,600 benefit. You're only paying 3%. You could invest that and get the higher than 3% even now, or a better use of it as well. So it does, though, and this is why you would need to do this in conjunction with some advice to go through and see what are all the impacts on her to make sure she is not any worse off, and then to make sure that you're going to be better off as well, so that everybody's actually happy in this particular scenario. It does need to be done just as a total bond, so it doesn't. You can't have a contract showing $400,000 bond plus an extra 100. Essentially, we'll assess that quite differently. It does need to show $500,000 bond. So some of the packages and things out of that, when you look at it and say there are significant differences that can be made, and they can actually help to increase the income that's coming into your business as well. So a couple of things to think about if you are or aren't doing them in your business is the periodic payments. Provides those exemptions we talked about to the client. It could also be a higher earnings rate for you. If you have a facility that is very cashed up and you're just investing the money in the bank. ING Direct's paying about 5.8, so the cash rates are somewhere around about those sorts of investment rates. So if you look at that, you can charge, what's the current, 7.95? Yep, 7.95. So again, periodic payment gives you a higher interest rate than what you can get potentially in some of the other investments. So for a lot of organisations that are cashed up, they are starting to revert your periodic payments for those reasons as well. Looking at higher bonds, some clients, if you can get the right financial advice for them, they may be willing to talk about higher bonds, because that financial advice can help them see how they can actually be better off. So it all links into working together. And can also, in some cases, increase that government subsidy as well. And look at also the issue of transferring bonds. I think that's another concern that a lot of people have about just being able to, what happens, they've paid their bond, once they've done that, to be able to just transfer that when they move from low care to high care. If you have the ability and the capacity to do that, can also be a good strategy for them and for yourself too. So I think there's sort of three sorts of things to think about in the way you look at it, and also to understand why it works, working with getting advice for them. Minimising the financial risk, you're absolutely right, there is a whole lot of legal liabilities in this area as well. So providing advice on financial products is regulated under the Corporations Act. So if you were just providing advice, information about fees, information about services, information about options, it's not necessarily financial advice. But if you make any sort of recommendation about how they should deal with it, where they should put their money, where they should invest it, whether they should sell a particular asset, whether they should invest in a particular asset, you are getting into the Corporations Act area. And you do need to be licensed in that area to provide advice. The penalties for individuals are $22,000 fine and 2 years jail for both. So I think we all really want to avoid those. For corporations, they're actually much higher than that. So you need to think about potentially, again, are you inadvertently, in the effort of trying to help people that are coming in, stepping into the area of giving advice? So are your admissions people or the other people dealing with the clients that are coming in, are they actually stepping over and not just giving information but potentially giving advice? And if you think there's a risk of that, that's where it can be good to have other mechanisms in place where maybe you have got brochures that are available that can just be handed out, so it is specifically limited to advice.